Well, right on. Episode 2, The Quiet Fight Canada. Thanks for everybody who's listening, watching. We're grateful to be here, and we're really excited about this episode.
Yeah, on today's episode, brought in a good friend of mine, been friends for a lot of years, Chris Kolinski. He has been a big advocate for mental health for many years, and has definitely helped me in my journey. So really pumped to have him on the show and share his story.
Thanks for coming, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you. You're looking well.
Thank you. I was hoping to go to the gym this morning, but I didn't make it because I had a different meeting. But
Yeah, well, it happens to the best of us, right?
yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to see what you guys do with this. So
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, today we're going to be talking about growing up with trauma. So, I mean, we're not going to really do any specific questions. We just want to see what you're comfortable with sharing and whatever story that you want to tell us and, tell the world.
yeah, for sure. So it's tough to know exactly when to start, like when to start the story. But for me, I've been going on this healing journey since about 2016. My wife and I separated in 2016 for about a month and a half. And ever since then, I've been just trying to like dig deep and figure out kind of who I am and what my past traumas as a kid, how they played into the role of the person I am today, right?
Yep.
And so it's done a lot of introspective learning, a lot of counseling. I've been seeing the same guy since 2016, and so he's done tremendous work with helping me figure out who I am. And here I am today. So I know I listened to your guys' first show, and I know you and I talked about this quite a bit, but there's nothing like this that exists out there. And for me, and again, hearing what you were saying on the last episode as well, growing up, it's one of those things that are, as a man or as a boy growing up, when you're getting in your own feelings, which is inevitable.
Yep.
When you're going through stuff. You're told to man up or don't cry because boys don't cry, right? And so we really internalize that and just kind of bury it deep down inside of us, and we don't really realize that it affects us until something happens when we're adults and everything kind of comes crashing down around you, right?
Yep.
My counselor's name's Myron referred to it as the trauma history is kind of like a basement, right? And so when you're dealing with trauma or getting trauma, you're kind of taking these boxes and you're putting it into your basement. I'll deal with this later, right? Yeah. But there gets to be a point in time when you have too many boxes in this basement, and you can't fit anything in there anymore, which is where that kind of meltdown or that big incident happens, right?
100%, yeah.
And the only way through that is you got to go down, then you have to dig every single one of those boxes out of there and carry those boxes upstairs to make room for more stuff, right? And
so and then go through each box and
exactly
look at it and separate it and see what you can deal with, right?
Am I throwing this out? Am I keeping this, right? Like, and that's your trauma, that's your memories. And so that's what I've been doing, is just since 2016, that's 9 years now, is going into that basement and pulling up these boxes and going through these boxes. So for me it's been a wild journey, growing up and then dealing with this stuff, as an adult. But I'm proud of where I am today. It's been a wild ride, and I've been pretty open about it. Part of my healing journey is being open about it, which is why I'm very excited about what you guys are doing, because I think it's really important to be open, especially as men being told not to be open. So
100%. This whole process has been very therapeutic for me,
Yeah.
because as people know me, that I am always the quietest person in a room. And I think a lot of that comes back to some of that childhood trauma that maybe I boxed away in the basement and haven't really touched on. So that's why we're here.
I think as kids we go through, not everyone, but we go through lots of stuff, right? And what impacts what's traumatic to you isn't necessarily traumatic to me, and vice versa, and whatnot. It's kind of how we internalize that and bring that forward. But so I guess today, I think I think to me, I know we chatted about this a little earlier. Like, I'm not usually nervous about this because I do a lot of podcasts, right? I do a lot of videos, that kind of stuff. So,
and you're a great public speaker.
And that's right? And I did a keynote speech last week for Haven Kids House, right? And so I'm usually not nervous. I'm pretty good with this, but the difference is those times there, I'm standing in front of people I don't know, telling them my story, right? Or I'm on video with someone I don't know or whatever, right? Where right now I'm in a room with two of my bros and we're just gonna talk and get vulnerable. So I am actually pretty nervous about
for sure.
Talking about this stuff.
But, and like the thing about trauma is everyone is dealing with it different, and you don't know where someone is at in their recovery, right? Like, from people that I've talked to, they had no idea that I had a drinking problem. Nope. They had no idea.
Because we're good. We were told growing up, we were told to hide it.
Exactly.
Right?
Like everyone thought it was kosher, man. Yeah. Right. And when I met you a couple years ago, like, you are just, you're a shining star, man. Like, you go into a room and everything's just brighter. Like, you're a great conversationalist. You're a great person in general. I had no idea. Right, about your past, and why would I? But the way that you present yourself now, I would just say is a testament to how far you've come. Because I would have had no idea the shit that you went through.
The reality is, man, I was struggling back then too, right? And so I'm still struggling to this day. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm working through, and I think for me, part of my coping mechanism was doing that, was to make sure whenever I went into a room, was to be high energy, high-fiving people and making everyone smile. Because as a kid, that's all that I could control as a kid, right? Yeah. And I couldn't control what my parents were doing to me, doing whatever. But I could control what I can do, right? And for me, it was, I was always a funny kid in class. I'd be doing the dumb stuff and making people laugh whenever I could, because that was the one thing that I could control. And that carried on when I was an adult. And the reality is like, the trauma that happened, that was a trauma response back then. It was a coping mechanism that I carried as an adult. But the reality is, like, that's why I'm successful in my job today, is because
you have a big personality now.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
and so it's tough, because like a lot of people, when they hear my story of what happened, they're like, oh, I wish that didn't happen to you, or that kind of stuff. But to me, it's like, it's shaped me who I am, right? It's made me a stronger person, and it's allowed me to just to be a better dad and better husband, be a better self-employed, businessman, right? So,
well, let's get into that. Wherever you want to start, and you share with us, we're gonna share with you.
Yeah, man. So, there's a lot, right? Like, it's whenever I try and think, I went to counseling the other day to try and unpack some stuff, and I was like, there's just not enough time in an hour to talk about everything, right? But give you a quick background, I guess. I don't know my biological dad. Never met him before. Don't know anything about him. At an early age, my mom was, and I didn't know this until later on in life, but my mom was a prostitute, and I was a product of that. And so, she was into drugs. She was into sleeping with a ton of men. And so I don't think she even knows, even to this day, like, if she'll reach out to me every once in a while, and that's when they're like, hey, any information about this guy? I don't remember, that. But I don't think she knows, right? And so I didn't have that biological dad figure for the early part of my life, but she did marry, when I was 2 years old. She found a guy, his name was Terry. He later on became my stepdad. And that was a pretty tumultuous relationship. So that didn't really last too long. But he ended up having two girls with my mom, and so obviously he was a part of our life, right? And you know what, kudos to him. He's not with us anymore, but kudos to him that in those early stages he did make me feel like I was his son, and so I did have that, but. They broke up, and my mom was pretty toxic about that, and would use us kids against him, and use him against us, like vice versa. And there'd be times when I'd come home from school, and my mom would be passed out on the couch, and there'd be needles on the table, drugs. We'd try to wake her up, no food in the house, and so that trauma kind of started real early, right? And as a kid, it's hard to navigate that, really.
Yeah.
'Cause, when that's all you know, you kind of think that's a normal thing. And so I was kind of left to take care of my two younger sisters at a pretty early age while my mom was out doing things or passed out. And so that's some of the earlier trauma stuff. Later on in life, she did end up leaving us, and she met some guy and moved out to Ontario, and just kind of left us with my stepdad and the girl's biological dad. And that was kind of crazy in itself because he didn't know how to be a dad. She kept him out of everything.
Yep.
And so he's kind of just thrown into this, and then he ended up getting together with the babysitter because he needed a babysitter for us so we can go to work, and he was a new dad, didn't know what to do, and yeah, he ended up just shacking up with the babysitter, ended up marrying her, and that's when kind of things got a lot worse. He was always an alcoholic. She was an alcoholic, so they'd drink together. Her dad was an alcoholic, so he'd come over and they'd drink a lot, and it started off with just like, having a few beers at the house, and then it started, a few beers turned into a lot of beers, and it got to the point where they couldn't really even afford that. And it go up to, I don't know if you guys know, but back in the day, they had these big 2-liter bottles of beer. They'd come in like brown bottles, and they were called the Big Bear was what it was called. I don't know why I remember.
Is it kind of like a Colt 45?
Yeah, but it was like brown, like Coke bottles almost.
Oh, okay.
And it was just the grossest. It was like
malt liquor.
Beer. Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
then him and Grandpa and stepmom would just be drinking that, and so obviously living in a house with a couple of alcoholics is not the easiest thing either. And when that's kind of your normal thing that you see, right? So yeah, at a pretty early age, it's dealing with that is crazy. But for me, the stuff that sticks out the most was from the time as early as my mom, with the drugs, never having food, man. Like it was like we'd go days without eating. Sometimes the only times that we would actually eat was when I went to school. They'd have paper bag lunches that you'd be able to stand in line for. Those would be really the only times that I would get to eat. We used to go to the food bank once a week, and then they changed that to every 2 weeks, and they'd give you the same amount or less food, so you have to try and ration that. For even just saying ration that is crazy, right? But you'd have to try and make sure that would last, and as a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, I mean that's tough, right?
Dude, I didn't know any of that, and I cannot imagine how that was for you.
Yeah, and that's to this day, like it's stuff that I still struggle with. That's probably going down in that basement and pulling all those boxes out. I don't have many boxes left, right? Like I've done a lot of that work, and some of those boxes that still remain is the eating stuff. And so, it's something I don't talk about openly right now. I talk about pretty much everything else openly, but the one thing I kind of keep to myself for the most part is my struggle with eating. Ever since I was turned to be an adult, started making my own money, and being able to eat whatever I wanted, I've struggled with food, right? It's so it wasn't until a few years ago I realized, maybe I struggle with binge eating. I just eat until I can't eat anymore. And it wasn't until I was talking to my daughters. I have two daughters, you guys know, and we'd have chips in the house, and they wouldn't eat the chips. They just or have a few here and there, but no, I'd eat the whole bag. And I'd have conversations with them about how they feel after they're done eating. Like, do you guys feel full, like stuffed, like you need to take a nap? They're like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? You guys don't like? They're like, yeah, we just eat until we're not hungry anymore, and that's it, right? Yeah. But for me, I would eat until like, how you feel after like Christmas dinner? Oh yeah. That's how I was every day. Like every meal, I would feel like you would feel after Christmas dinner. Yeah. So that's something for me as a kid. That's one of the last kind of boxes in that basement that I got to go down and dig out. But
I can on that particular topic, I can relate with you, Chris. From I don't know what age, but pretty young, like I would say grade 5, 6-ish, 4, 5, 6. I remember in my household, like I was bullied quite a bit. My dad had quite a way with words, but they would do a thing in my house where they would start, my brother and my dad would kind of pit against me a little bit, and they'd start teasing me because I was an overweight kid. I was kind of the fat kid growing up and all that kind of stuff. Right. And I get it, man. Like it got to me. I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but
Right.
I 100% have had an eating disorder.
Right.
Like, I remember going to a buddy's house for supper in grade, 6 or something like that. Having supper with their family, and then went to the bathroom, fucking threw up. Right. And so, like, I've, for the longest time, I still do have body dysmorphia. Right. If I don't go to the gym and burn my calories, like, my day's ruined. It's all I can think about. Every time I eat food, I'm calorie counting.
Right.
Every single time. Right. Because I've been called fat and I've been bullied about it. And, at home or, at school when I was growing up, right? That kind of stuff. So the eating thing, dude, and the struggle with food and all that kind of stuff, I get that.
Well, it's tough because you saw the extremes of both sides of things, right? You saw the extreme where you were, you might have been overweight and people close to you would make fun of you about that, or make comments about that, and that sucks. And so then you went drastically the other way.
Drastically, yeah.
And now you get the comments of, oh, you look great, you look shredded. I made the comment to you the other day, right? And that feels good. So you get this pain over here that feels terrible because people close to you are saying these negative things about your appearance. And then you get this drastic, feel good, almost euphoria of this, and almost, and maybe I'm wrong, but you almost don't believe it yourself sometimes when people say those nice things.
For sure.
When you get in your own head and it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy to me that you guys have these vivid memories of your childhood. Because I know for me, and like everybody deals with their trauma differently, and for me, I don't have a lot of childhood memories, and I think that was my brain's way of protecting myself.
100%.
And I know, like, growing up, I mean, you talked about your parents having an alcohol problem. My dad definitely had an alcohol problem, and with that came the physical abuse that not only me and my brothers would get, but also my mom. And I only really have like one or two memories of that specifically. Nothing for me, like happening to me, but me watching it happen. And I know there's more there, but like my memory just can't access that. So I know like everybody out there listening, like sometimes you don't have that memory. It's repressed, and I know there's ways that you can maybe try and get those back, but that's still something I'm searching for. But
man, I run into this all the time actually, where like I do remember a lot from my childhood, and I don't know why my brain hasn't shut it out, but like I remember as early as like 5 and under even, like, and that's what's crazy, like, and vividly, like I remember things like wearing, smells, like that kind of stuff, right? And but there are things where I just have never thought about, and a perfect example is I was talking to one of our buddies at the when we were having that fire the other day, and all of a sudden this like memory trigger that I haven't thought of in like 20 years about my biological mom coming back from Ontario and taking us to Waskesiu to the cabin, and I haven't thought about that for like 25 plus years. And I remember that was like one of the better memories of my biological mom, and it's kind of like my brain forgot all the good stuff and it's only remembering the bad stuff, right? Well, almost like a protection there.
Well, that's how our brains work, right? Like we don't really keep things that are happy and positive because that doesn't keep us alive. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So we learn from things that are negative for our survival, right? That's how our brains are wired. So you're more likely to remember all the bad times than any of the good times.
Because you protect yourself with the bad stuff, right? And
100%.
I do it, and this is where I overcorrect with, having 2 girls. It's something that I overcorrect in my parenting a lot. I know when, like, I'm very critical and hyper vigilant when it comes to people being around my kids, because like for me, one of the bigger traumas growing up was the sexual abuse, and that came at the hands of both my stepmom and stepdad, and a cousin as well from earlier than that even. Yeah. And growing up, and now that I have 2 girls, I'm like very vigilant with that kind of stuff. And we have conversations with them all the time about it. And sleepovers have always been a really big struggle for me. And so I, because my brain's remembering those traumas, it's kind of like making sure it's like, hey, don't forget this because you got kids now and you got to make sure it doesn't happen to them, right? Yeah. So carrying forward those negative those negative experiences, they're helping kind of shape who I am today in almost every aspect, right? And so sometimes too much, like I said, I think sometimes I'm a little too the opposite extreme.
Yep.
Making sure I'm protecting those kids, but it's tough. So.
Yep. And I never experienced, sexual abuse or anything like that. My house was mainly angry.
Yeah.
Angry, and at times it could be quite violent. My earliest memory of any sort of violence or anything like that, I would have been 7 or 8 years old. And I just remember pretty vividly just saying something to my dad, and, his reaction of pure anger, like, you little fucker. And he chased me into the bedroom. He ended up getting up on top of me, like pinning me down to the ground, and had his hands around my neck, choking me out. Right. And I remember vividly hearing my mom, like, behind him, like, get off him, like, I'm going to call the cops, and, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, for me, that's kind of my earliest memory of violence. But in my household, it was anger all the time. Right. Like, it was using the worst words against each other. There was never a time for peace. Any sort of happiness was done in secret, right? We're not going to tell your dad this. We're going to do this kind of thing. Keep it a secret, all that kind of stuff. And it was just tension all the time.
Yeah, I know for me, like, speaking on kids, I'm definitely like you, where, God, I love my kids so much. But I definitely got to check myself, because there's sometimes, like, kids can be little shits, and they push your buttons, and they push the boundaries, and parents get angry. And there's definitely times where for me, like, I get so angry, and then I just, like, make sure to check myself and don't step over a line. And I think that's part of breaking the cycle. Like, I'm sure my father had some stuff done to him when he was a kid. Like, I'm sure there's a cycle there, a past. And
totally,
I can speak for me and my brothers. Like, I have three brothers, and we're all very successful, and we all have our own struggles and our own path. Mm-hmm. But one thing that we can all be proud of is that, like, we are breaking that cycle, and that cycle is broken. We all have kids now. We're not big drinkers. I have a rule that I don't drink alone, because you definitely don't want to fall into that cycle and bring it on to your kids. You want them to have that better life, and that's definitely what's kept me in check. Kids, like, honestly,
it's crazy that we have to have that kind of hypervigilance, where it's like normal people that haven't experienced that kind of trauma don't have to make rules for themselves of, like, don't drink alone. That's my rule. I don't drink alone. People don't have those kind of rules put in place. Yeah. But, like, we have to, and I get that too, man. Like, I don't drink at my house. Yeah. I don't. Right. And because it's just, it's a slippery slope, and seeing what we saw, we're like, that's not what we want to.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what, I loved drinking alone. I wish I would have knew about that rule.
Right.
It is what it is, though.
I told you about it.
You did. You did. I thought you were joking, though. So.
But the tough thing is our brains kind of, like, justify things. Like, once you're in that kind of thing, right? And so your brain just starts telling you, it's 1 drink's okay, and it's 2 drinks, 3 drinks, right? And our brains do crazy things when it's trying to, and that's what your brain's doing. It's trying to protect you, right? Like, it's trying to protect you from all that trauma that you're not dealing with, all those boxes in the basement that you're not digging up. Your brain's going, like, just drink some more, so that we don't have to deal with this shit, right? And
so, me and Garland were talking, and we're just thinking, like, the way that we all grew up differently, but you're a child, right? Like, you don't know any different in your situation. At what point did you kind of realize that maybe your situation wasn't the norm?
Man, that's a great question. Because the stuff, I also went to a community school, right? So there's a lot of kids that are going through similar things, right? Like, it's not a great situation. So it's always tough to know what's right and what's wrong. So I don't know how to answer that, but what I can tell you is there was a turning point. There was a turning point in my life where I took charge of kind of my future and, like, the direction where things were going to go. Because like, you know, probably similar to your dad, like my dad, I was terrified of him. I was absolutely scared of him.
So scared. Yep.
And the abuse that I was getting, like the sexual abuse that I was getting, it got to the point where it was pretty much every day, from stepmom, stepdad, and doing everything that you could imagine. And it was brutal. And I was scared that if I said anything that, like, I thought he'd kill me.
Yep.
That's what I thought. And I remember specifically this one time, I was 15 years old and I was doing dishes. I hated doing dishes, that we all did. And I was doing dishes and it was taking me I knew it was late at night. I knew as soon as I was done dishes, the abuse was going to start. They were going to bring me downstairs. The abuse was going to start. So I was taking forever. And I was like, if I take long enough, you know, they're just going to go to sleep and I can go to sleep and not have to worry about this. And so I was taking forever. Like, it was like 2 hours, 3 hours doing these dishes, right? And I can tell my stepmom's waiting for me, and then she comes over, hurry up with those fucking dishes, right? Mm-hmm. And I snapped, and my stepdad was downstairs, and I snapped, and I just like yelled at her, and I said, no. I'm like, I am not going downstairs. This is wrong. What you guys are doing to me is wrong. And if I told anyone about this, they would agree with me, and you guys would be going to jail. I am not doing this anymore. And I said it with like a raised voice, very stern, and that was like the most brave moment of my entire life.
As a 15-year-old.
And she like looked at me and she was like angry. Like, she was kind of dumb. Like, she just looked at me like she was like angry, and she just huffed and puffed downstairs. And then I was like, holy shit. And I went from being like brave to like shaking. I was like, I'm gonna die. Like, legit, I was like, I'm gonna die. And then I hear, we had like creaky stairs. I hear the stairs creaking. And I can always tell who it was, him or her. I was like, he's coming. I'm like, I'm toast, right?
Yeah.
And he comes up, and I'm standing in the kitchen still, and he just like stands up in the doorway. And I was like, even saying that, I was just accepting that I was gonna die. And he just like looks at me like the most calmest voice, and he's like, Chris, I just want to tell you that I'm sorry, and you're right, and it'll never happen again. And he just like turned around, went back downstairs, and I was like,
wow,
what just happened, right? And I was like, you almost kind of like hard to believe it. So then I go to lay down in bed, and I'm still kind of like freaking out in my head, so I just can't sleep that night. Wake up the next day, and Terry was, that's my stepdad, he was laying on the couch, and he was completely unresponsive. He was just like laying on the couch staring at the ceiling, wasn't saying anything. So I get ready for school, go to school. I had football that night. I go to football, I get an interception, run it in for a touchdown. I'm like, come home like so stoked, right? Yeah. Come home like, my stepmom's at the house, and she doesn't care. And then Terry's still laying on the couch, just like laying there staring at the ceiling. She's like, oh, your dad's got a headache. And I was like, oh. I was like, hey, I telling him about my day. I got an interception, ran in for a touchdown. I was, super proud of it. And he's just like mumbles. He's like, I'm like, and this guy's like a strong man. Like, he was like a scary dude, right? Just kind of mumbles. And I was like, hey, like this is awesome. I like ran this touchdown in, right? Yeah. And he's like mumbles again. And I'm like, okay, and kind of like being loud, whatever, and come back trying to talk to him again. And then all of a sudden he looks over and he says, Chris, you selfish bastard, I don't care about this right now. And I can't even remember what exactly he said anymore. I told a story like 5 or 6 years ago, and I remembered everything, but that's a memory that's kind of like going away now. But he said something like, you selfish bastard, something. And then I goes like, oh shit. And then just kind of like went back to staring at the ceiling. And I was like, okay, whatever, went to sleep. Or I didn't go to sleep that night. I wanted to go to a buddy's house for a sleepover. And then I convinced Rose to let me, or to go to sleepover. Or no, was it that night? No, sorry, it wasn't that. It was the next night I wanted to. But the next morning I woke up and he was gone. So that's what it was. I went to sleep that night. That was Thursday after the football game. Went to sleep, woke up in the morning, he was gone already. And I just assumed he went to work. And then I wanted to sleep over at Shane's, and she was like, well, wait till your dad gets home, we'll talk to him. I was like, okay. So go to school that day, come home, he's still not home, which isn't unheard of. But then 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock rolls around, no one's heard from the guy. And we're like, okay, this is weird. I'm like, hey, can I spend the night? She's like, wait till your dad gets home. It's like 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And then he's still not home. And then Rose is like, yeah, okay, you can go sleep over, but make sure you're home at 7 in the morning tomorrow, which would be Saturday, so you can help your dad. He's gonna want you to work. And I was like, okay. So I go to Shane's, whatever, we stay up all night, playing video games, whatever, and I wake up in the morning at like 6 o'clock in the morning. His dad, Shane's dad, wakes me up and says, hey, the phone's for you. So it was Rose, my stepmom. She's like, hey, can you come home, please? And I was like, yeah, sure. I just assumed dad wants to go to work early.
Yeah.
Come home, and there's like police outside. There's like my uncles and aunts vehicles were there. I'm like, what's going on? I walk in, and they kind of bring me to my room, and then Rose comes in there, brings all the kids into the living room. We sit down. She's like, yeah, so as you know, like your dad was left yesterday morning. She's like, I didn't talk to him all day. He didn't come home last night, and so I went outside to go see if he was parked in the garage, and they found him there. He killed himself that night. And it was literally like 2 nights after, or I don't know when exactly the time it happened, but it was right after I said,
You stood up for yourself.
I stood up for myself.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it was a crazy experience, but
Yep.
yeah.
Wow.
How about you, Jason? Is there a point where you realized that childhood probably wasn't the most normal?
Probably in my later years, late 20s, early 30s, like I probably realized that what I went through, broken home, alcoholic father, physical abuse. I think as I was older, I realized, yeah, okay, that's not normal, and made that decision, probably in my late 20s that, that's not going to happen to my family. Yeah, as a kid, I don't think I really knew any different.
I don't think it's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's normal, and we had a decent childhood. Like, I mean, my mom did all she could for us. We were in sports. We were very active, which I think probably broke the bank for her. She probably definitely had trauma and struggles that she was dealing with, but she put all her effort into us and making sure that we had as normal as a childhood as we could. And we had great grandparents that lived really close, so very, very thankful for those, for that relationship. And it kept things as normal as possible for sure. So yeah. How about you?
Yeah, when you're a kid, you don't know any different. There's 2 things that I can think of that really solidified that my family dynamic wasn't healthy, wasn't normal, right? So when you're living in chaos, you think chaos is the norm, obviously, right? I can remember specifically being younger, when you're about the age to start going over for dinners with different families or even sleepovers. For me, like when I started doing that, I really started to see different family dynamics from multiple different families and friends. And the main characteristic that I noticed was like a very loving, supporting, family. And, there was a lot of love at times in my house, but it was mainly drowned by anger and violence and chaos, right? So that's when I started to notice, because I'd go over to my friends' houses, and if my friend, we're little, he breaks a toy, right? Oh, it's okay, we'll get you another one. It's all in my house. It'd been like, you fucking retard, like how much that fucking costs, like fucking good luck getting another one, you fucking idiot, like that kind of stuff. So I started to realize like it wasn't normal. But I think the big one for me would be when I was about 16. I started working out and I was playing football and I felt like a tough guy. Kind of. We were at the lake one time with my family and then my dad's brother and his family. And me and my dad got into an argument about something, and he fucking just lost it. He like fucking pretty much attacked me on the beach. He got on top of me. He's fucking cock fist, like, I'm gonna fucking give it to you. And my uncle jumped in and, he fucking like, Jamie, what the fuck are you doing kind of thing. And he grabbed him and he grabbed me. He's like, Dylan, come with me. And my uncle, just puts his arm around my shoulder, doesn't say anything. And I, drive away with him for the day. And, I felt like I was in a movie.
Right.
Like when that kid is like going through shit and then, fucking social services shows up and they're just like, hey, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like that moment, about 16, I was like, this
isn't normal.
This isn't fucking normal. Like I've seen how my other family members and other sides of the family operate and how they're with their children. And like, this isn't fucking normal.
No, and they all tiptoed around him too. It was all like walking on shells around.
Yeah, no one wants to
him.
piss the big bear off kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of my turning point, I guess, that I kind of realized. But
so, question for you guys. So what internal battles did you fight in your own head in this journey that no one really saw?
Yeah. Man, the biggest one for me was the fact that I thought it didn't impact me. So like as an adult, I was like, I'm fine, right? Like you just kind of compartmentalize it, and you just kind of like, it doesn't affect me. It's not. This isn't a problem, right? Like it doesn't affect me. I'd even talk about it. It was like there was like
I've tucked it away. It's gone.
Yeah, someone would bring it up, and I'd be like, yeah, this happened to me as a kid. Because I talked about like it wasn't like because I ran away from home after Terry killed himself. It was like 2 months later I ran away from home and never went back. And so like when a kid runs away, it's like you gotta have those conversations, right? So it wasn't like it was a secret after that point, but I just pretended like it wasn't a problem. And the reality is that my entire life it's been a problem, right? Even as an adult. And it wasn't until 2016 happened, I separated with my wife, we get back together, and I started getting counseling, that I realized, this is a problem, right? This has always been a problem, and it's gonna always be a problem unless I fix it, right? So that's probably the biggest struggle that I've had as an adult, was getting to that point where I knew I needed to fix it.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. And I'm so happy that you found somebody that you can relate to. For me, it definitely took a long time to find somebody up until recently. I've seen counselors throughout my life, probably 3, 4, 5-ish. But none of them were really able to get to that level. Like they weren't asking the hard questions. They weren't making me think. And maybe part of it too, I was putting on like a social facade.
Yeah, man. It's like you might not have even been ready yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And up until recently, like my psychologist that I see now, she started asking those hard questions in a very nice way, and definitely got me thinking down that path and unpacking those boxes. So prior to that, like I did exactly what you did. I tucked it away. I pretended like it didn't affect me.
And you believed it yourself.
100%.
Like you believed it. You're like,
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
In fact, I'm better than fine.
Yeah.
Like, look where I am. I'm doing better than what was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Yeah. I got a family, beautiful kids. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing that. Like I'm good. I'm good, right? But you're not. It's still impacting your life, and So it's been an interesting journey thus far.
Yeah. Do you want to just ask me that question one more time?
Yeah, sure, buddy. So what internal battles did you fight on your journey that nobody saw?
Yeah, so my biggest internal battle was sense of self and identity. My whole life, I wore a mask. I wore different masks, and I was just whoever you needed me to be given the moment or situation. And so I grew up like that. Like, you put me anywhere and I'd fit in, because I would just act and be the person as, a group think kind of identity, right? And so what I've found quite freeing and enlightening and scary is that since I've been, doing my therapy and I've been sober for over 8 months, is what they say is that when you stop drinking and you deal with your mental health and all that kind of stuff, you kind of start to become the person or child that you were when it really started to hit home and you really did start to mask those traumas. So like I'm feeling a lot better, feeling a lot healthy now, and now I'm fucking 13.
Yeah.
Right? So that's scary because my tastes have changed. Like my music interests have changed. My hobbies have changed. My favorite color has changed, right? Like everything that I thought was Dylan wasn't Dylan. It was pieces of situations and relationships and friendships that I've experienced the past 34 years, and they're not mine.
Yeah.
So I'm on a path to discovery, man. Like I'm figuring out who am I? And so that's the biggest thing, is my sense of identity.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you bring up, you know, I call mine Little Chris. Like that's my, you know, Little Dylan, Little Chris, Little Jason. Like I'm building a relationship with this kid essentially as an adult, right? Like this Little Chris person, because it's kind of like a cool thing, because I'm that person now that I needed back then, right? Yeah. And so and part of the work that I'm going through with my counselor is, you know, when I am going through those times of, you know, struggling, especially like with eating, like that's something I'm currently going through. You know, just take a moment, be present with myself, and just be like, hey, talk to little Chris and be like, hey, don't worry, I know, oh shit. I know you're struggling right now. Like I know, you know, but I got you. You know what I mean? Like Chris has you now, and everything's going to be okay. You know, and having that conversation with little Chris, just telling him that is, you know, that's part of the work that I'm going through right now. It's funny that I've been actually using Chat GPT quite a bit to like have conversations with Chat GPT, and I instructed it within the last couple of weeks actually, that I want it to be future Chris. I want it to be the Chris in the future that has everything figured out. And when I'm coming to him and talking to him these problems, he can't tell me how I'm going to get there. He can't give me anything about the future because that'll ruin the timeline. But you know, he can tell me that everything's going to be okay, right? And so having these conversations with this future Chris, and then talking about little Chris, and it's been a really cool healing journey for me. So.
Oh man, I had something similar with my therapist where we had a conversation about self-love. Mm-hmm. Right? Do you love yourself? No, I don't. Fucking hate myself. Right? Well, do you remember a time, you know, did your dad ever say he loved you when you were a kid? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. You got a picture of yourself when you're pretty like little? Yeah, I do. Okay. I want you to get that picture, stick it on your mirror at home, and every morning I want you to look at that picture. I want you to look at your reflection, and you're going to start positive self-talk. So, well, fuck. I go do that the first time, and I'm looking at myself, and I'm looking at that little kid. You know, it's not your fault. It's okay. Mm-hmm. I love you. And I'm just fucking leaking, right? Like I'm bawling like a baby. But you start doing that reflection, it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's not your fault. I love you. You start to feel pretty free.
Yeah, man.
You know?
Yeah. I've been starting to do some the last few days. This is very recent. Is when I go to bed, I've been having trouble sleeping because my mind is just going and going and going and going, thinking about everything. Mm-hmm. And so now the last few days, my wife doesn't know this, so if you're listening, here it is. Before I go to bed, I get to bed, and I just think to myself, was I a good person today? Answer's been yes. Okay, good. Was I a good father today? Answer's yes. And then the last one that I'm still kind of struggling with, because I think in a lot of ways it's taken the back seat, is was I a good husband today? And that one has been hitting me hard because everything else has taken priority, and it's hard to do everything. And so I'm definitely going to be making sure that like all those three things when I go to bed is yes, yes, yes. Because it's hard. It's hard to make sure, and everyone wants to be a good person, right? So when you go to bed, or when I go to bed and I think about it, like, what did I do today that was good? I just make that checklist in my head, and it keeps my mind from thinking about all the bullshit that's happening right now.
It's easy to go to the negative stuff that you're doing, right? And again, same thing when we were talking about our positive memories. We don't think about the positive memories.
No.
That's not something we just remember, right?
And I'm sure there's tons of good things, right?
Yeah.
But the bad things always outweigh it.
And that's what our brains default to that, because like, again, that's how we were raised. We were raised to just figure it out, right? And so like, the bad stuff, that's all you're replaying in your head. Okay, I did this bad. How can I do this differently? What can I? That's all you're thinking about, right? So if you're going to bed and you're like, hey, I was a good person today. I was a good dad today. I was a good husband today. I mean, that's awesome.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's a cool way to end that day.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me. So another question for you guys. So do you believe that somebody can fully heal from their trauma?
Yeah.
Or is it more about learning to carry it differently?
I think you can fully heal, for sure. You'll never forget it, right? It'll always be there, but it'll affect you differently, right? I never used to believe that. So I remember sitting with my counselor. This was one of the first sessions back in 2016, and he's trying to get me to explain what I'm feeling, and I was like, man, you know what I feel right now? I feel like I'm in this dark tunnel, and it's just like it goes on forever. It's like, and I just keep walking through this tunnel, and it's just dark, and there's no light at the end, and I'm just like walking in the deeper and deeper into this dark tunnel, right? And saying that out loud at the time, I was like, that's a sad thing, right?
Yeah.
And then after a few months of going to see him, I remember like this, we revisited that. I'm like, you know what I feel like now? I feel like I'm in this dark tunnel, and I look back and it's dark behind me, right? But when I look forward, I see this little light there. You know what I mean? It's like this end of this tunnel. And I know now that like the further I go in this tunnel, the closer I'm going to get to that light. And eventually I'm going to get there, and I'll still look back and I'll still have this dark tunnel behind me, but it'll be pretty cool to see how far I've gone, so.
It's pretty interesting you bring up that analogy, because we just did a post a couple days ago about light being at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. So, and we've never talked about that. No. So that's pretty neat. No. Yeah.
That's because that's to me, that was like the perfect analogy, because like there's darkness behind me.
Yeah.
I'm walking, and I'm like, where am I even walking to at this point? Like I'm just going through this, and I'm like what am I doing, right? And everything's just dark, and I got this beautiful family, and I got this amazing job, and all these great friends and everything, but like it's so dark in this tunnel, right? And so once I realized that there is light at this end of the tunnel, and my whole perspective changed, and I actually felt like my I don't know if recovery or healing journey just like kick started into gear at that moment. I was like, hey, I got like this burst of energy. Now I want to sprint to the end of this tunnel, right? And so I do think you can heal. It's still going to be there, right? The tunnel's not going anywhere, but you'll heal from it. That's what I think.
Well, I think you changed my opinion.
Yeah, I know. Dylan and I talked about this yesterday, and him and I had different views. So yeah, what do you think now, Dylan?
Well, you know what? I'm very fresh in my recovery and my journey, so I think I'm going to go back and forth on my opinion for a while until I can really solidify what I believe in. Yesterday I was saying I think you can heal like 95% of it, and then the rest just becomes something that you manage for the rest of your life. But now I'm not so sure after listening to you talk.
Well, let's think of it this way. So let's just say, when you book a trip to go to Mexico, right? Let's say you book it 6 months in advance. Day one of you, like that's 6 months where you're like, that, it seems like forever until I go on this trip, right? Like 6 months seems like an eternity to go on this trip, right? Then the closer you get to it, you're like, 3 months away now. That 3 months, when you look back, felt like it was lightning speed, right? Yeah. But like you're like, I still have 3 months ahead of me? Oh my God, right? But then it's like the day before, and you're like, the 6 months prior just seemed like it was like, went by like so fast, and now you're there, right? And, and it's I think it's the same thing. It's like, you're looking down this tunnel, there's some light there, but you're like, I have no clue how far this tunnel is. It's the light's still small. Every step I get is getting a little bit bigger, but it just seems like it's just out of reach. But I think, like, I truly believe that light's getting a lot bigger for me, right? But I've been on this journey for a long time. Like, it's been almost 10 years of me working through this, right? Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that we're always growing. We're always trying to get better as a people. But this stuff that we've all gone through is it's not gonna affect us the way that it affects us today, right? And like I said, that tunnel's not going anywhere. That shit that we went through is not going anywhere. But we'll be healed from it, and it's gonna be different.
I think you're right. And the example I used yesterday, that I would like to believe to be true, and this is gonna be controversial for anybody who's an addict or drinks or anything like that, but what I was saying yesterday was there's a new theory kind of on, alcoholism, specifically as a disease, that, like, we're a product of our situation, environment, and, that's how things develop. Am I going to be an alcoholic forever? I think that's a victim mentality, and that's something that I don't want people to think of me. I am not a victim. I've made choices. I dealt with some things inappropriately, and I've coped inappropriately, right? Like, we wouldn't, if you see a successful businessman who's in his 50s, he's a multimillionaire, but he was a drug addict in his 20s. Are you still going to call him a drug addict? No. Right? Like, no. I would say no.
I wouldn't say it, but
like, he hasn't done drugs for 30 years. Is he still a drug addict?
No. Well, like, it's
right,
tough, because if maybe he's not struggling with it, but if he was to do it, do you think he'd just go right back into that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a constant, and that's why I think we're constantly working on ourselves.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And so does that go back to, instead of healing, are you carrying it differently?
Because I don't want...
But I think both can be true. I think that you can carry it differently, and I think you can be healed.
I think each trauma has its own way.
Yeah. I think that it's just going to affect
It's
you.
complicated, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So yeah, like, I agree with you. I also agree on the 90% healed.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to go back and forth, right?
Yeah. I think that, like I said, it's something that it'll always be there, right? Like, this stuff will always be there, but how we handle it and how we get through it and how we manage it is just going to be different. Like, because I know the way I handle and manage things now is way different than what I did 10 years ago.
100%.
Right? And I know we talked about, like, my struggle with food, but the other thing I struggle with is, like, my insecurities. No one would ever think, because I'm, like, this high energy person, that I'm insecure, but that's, like, probably the number one thing in my life is I'm very insecure. And I can't remember where I was going with that, but just something that I back then, how I would have handled things, and now is completely different, even though I'm still insecure. But
speaking of insecurities, it's a big reason why I'm doing this. Like I touched on earlier in the show, I'm always the quietest person in the room. I was always afraid and scared to speak out, or what are other people going to think? What are you going to think? And it definitely trapped me in my trauma, for sure. And so that's a big reason why we're doing this, and a big step for me to talk into a mic, talk with other people, videotape,
That's why I was really excited when you guys were like, I'm doing this, regardless on what happens. I was like, this is going to be so unbelievably therapeutic for you guys to go through this process. And I think you guys are going to do so much growing from this, and it's going to be super cool.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm excited, like, 'cause I started my journey a long time ago, and I know where you guys are at, or kind of, right? And because we also go through our own things, but I'm so stoked for you guys. And I don't know if you guys see that light at the end of the tunnel, but it's like, you're gonna hit this moment, man. It's just gonna be like, boom, I'm there. Like, I'm sprinting to the end.
So I got one more question for you, Dylan. Do you have anything to add there?
Nope.
No. So this is my last question for all of us. So do you think society gives men enough space to talk about childhood trauma?
I think it's getting.
And if not,
Yeah.
what needs to change?
I think it's getting better, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot better because like our parents for sure didn't talk about their feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They wouldn't be doing, even if they had the podcast technology back then, they wouldn't be doing it. So no, I don't think that there is enough space to do it, but it's a lot better. And I think doing this kind of stuff where, you know, 3 dudes are sitting in a room and getting vulnerable and talking about this stuff, I think this is a start. You know what I mean? Like, and I know I think we had that conversation on Saturday about this, but when I did that Bell Let's Talk Day video where this is back in 2020, it was January 2020, and I've been meaning to record this video over and over again for years. Like I would record and I wouldn't post it because I was so scared of what people would think, right? Yeah. And that year I was like, I'm just doing it, and I posted this video, and the amount of like feedback I got from people were reaching out. I had not only people that I know or that I've talked to reach out, but I had people that I'd never met before that would message me and be like, I really appreciate your vulnerability. I'm going to do something like this, or this is what I've been struggling with. I'm going to go get help. And, you know, so I think, do we have enough space right now? No. But I think doing this kind of stuff is going to open that space. Even if one person watches this video and is like, I want to talk about my stuff, or I'm going to go talk to a counselor, right? Because like, again, our parents didn't go to a counselor. You know what I mean? Like they didn't, right? They didn't break the wheel. Yeah. And so we're doing that. We're trying to do that, get better, go to counseling, and yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's well said.
Yep, that's well said.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
I don't know, man. It's tough. I think. What do you want to like? What do you think is going to happen at the end of your guys' journey with this? What do you think is with, you know, your healing process? How do you think you're going to come out on the other side?
I think anything other than where I have been is positive. So, you know, we're taking baby steps, the appropriate steps. We're both getting the help that we need, talking about it. I just want, you know, this to grow, and I want to talk to more people, and I want people to reach out and just be able to speak your mind, right? Right now, if it stays exactly where it is right now, I couldn't be happier, because meeting Joe off the street who just wants to get something off his chest, that's what's going to make me happy. Yeah. Right? It's one person at a time. We're not going to change the world. Yeah. Just one person.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, for sure. For me, like this whole process is, you know, doing the podcast has made me find the words that I've been missing for so many years because I'm so quiet. Like I never knew how to talk about this. No one ever taught me how to talk about your feelings. And I think it's opening doors to my family relationships that can heal. You know, I'm sure my brothers and I it's going to open up conversations that we've never had because we didn't know how to. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped for it.
I'm excited.
And yeah.
Cool.
Well, right on. Well, thanks for coming, Chris.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. I hope people watching, listening really enjoyed this. We want some feedback. If you can like, comment, share, you know, if you see anybody who you think needs this, or if you want to share yourself, we want to hear from you.
Yep. DM us on Instagram, send us an email, thequietfightcanada@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We've heard from a lot of people already. Yeah,
Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, we got it all. So we're going to be here. We're going to be here every week, and just know you're not alone. So don't stay quiet.